They crumble the moment you stop giving them emotional access without consequences, because that is the hidden fuel of the entire avoidant dynamic. For a long time, the avoidant didn't need to fully show up to keep you attached. They didn't need consistency to keep your attention. They didn't need emotional maturity to keep the connection alive. All they needed was one thing: your predictable emotional availability. Whether they replied or not, whether they disappeared or not, whether they gave you crumbs or warmth, you were still emotionally there. You were still reachable. You were still hoping. You were still ready to respond. And that created a quiet system that worked in their favor. They could take space and still keep the bond. They could regulate intimacy by controlling distance while you regulated anxiety by increasing closeness. This is why avoidants often don't change when you love them harder. Love doesn't automatically create accountability. Love often creates tolerance. When you keep making excuses, keep understanding, keep returning after silence, keep accepting half effort, you unintentionally teach their nervous system a dangerous lesson. Distance is safe, and it doesn't cost me anything. They learn that withdrawal doesn't lead to loss. It leads to you trying more. They learn that silence doesn't end connection. It simply triggers your repair mode. And because they're avoidant, repair mode feels like pressure, so they withdraw again. It becomes a loop where your goodness becomes the glue that holds a broken pattern together. Emotional access without consequences looks like a lot of things. It's replying instantly every time they reappear, even after disrespect. It's staying available for late-night check-ins that go nowhere. It's giving them girlfriend or boyfriend energy, while they give you situationship energy. It's letting them disappear, and then rewarding their return with warmth, attention, and emotional intimacy as if nothing happened. It's answering their breadcrumbs with full meals. It's explaining your feelings again and again while they give you vague replies. It's forgiving without requiring change. It's hoping that if you are patient enough, they will finally become the version you believe is inside them. To an avoidant, that kind of access is comforting because it gives them control. They can come close when they want comfort and pull away when it feels intense, and they don't have to face the fear of losing you. That's the key: they don't have to face consequence. And when a person doesn't have to face consequence, they don't have to evolve. They can remain emotionally immature and still keep connection. They can remain inconsistent and still have you in their orbit. They can keep one foot in and one foot out, and your availability makes that possible. They crumble when that system breaks. And the system breaks when your nervous system stops chasing. Not when you become angry, not when you try to punish them, but when your energy becomes solid. When you stop treating their crumbs like hope. When you stop responding like access is automatic. When you stop making yourself easy to return to after they've disappeared. When you stop keeping the door open emotionally just because they might come back. That is the moment they feel something they're not used to feeling: uncertainty about access. Uncertainty activates them. Because avoidants are calm when they believe they can return anytime. They only start feeling the weight of loss when they sense the door is closing for real. Not slammed. Closed with dignity, closed with self-respect. Closed because you're no longer available to be half-loved. This is where the crumble begins: confusion first. They test you with a casual message. They expect the old response: instant warmth, instant attention, instant emotional availability. But now you respond differently. You're kind, but you're not hungry. You're open, but you're not chasing. You don't punish, but you also don't give. And their nervous system feels the shift immediately. They realize they no longer control the distance the same way, because your reaction used to be the lever. They could pull away and you would move closer. Now they pull away and you don't move. You stay steady. Steadiness is terrifying for an avoidant when it comes with boundaries, because it means their avoidance has consequences. It means access is earned, not assumed. It means they can't keep you on the shelf. And once they feel that, the old strategy stops working. They can't regulate by withdrawing, if withdrawal now risks permanent loss. That is the truth that makes them crumble, not your words, not your tears, but your calm refusal to keep giving them connection without commitment, intimacy without consistency, and access without respect. They don't fear losing you the way you think they do. Because the avoidant nervous system is not organized around abandonment first. It's organized around autonomy first. That doesn't mean they don't care. It means the moment closeness starts to feel like responsibility, expectation, or emotional caretaking, their body reacts as if danger is approaching. And this is the truth most people miss. An avoidant can miss you and still not come closer, because missing you is an emotion, but coming closer feels like a contract. When you're attached to an avoidant, your instinct is to be more open, more honest, more emotionally present. You try to talk it out. You share how you feel. You ask where you stand. You want clarity, reassurance, consistency. These are normal needs in a healthy relationship. But if the avoidance system is dysregulated, your needs get translated into one terrifying message. I'm going to have to take care of someone's feelings. In their body, being needed can feel like being trapped. It can feel like losing freedom, losing control, losing the right to breathe. So even when they genuinely like you, the moment they sense need, they start looking for exits. That's why they disappear after vulnerable conversations. That's why they shut down when you ask for commitment. That's why they get busy when things get emotionally intimate. It's not always manipulation. It's often a primitive survival response. Distance equals safety. Their nervous system learned somewhere. Sometime that closeness comes with demands they can't meet without shame. So instead of staying and risking failure, they withdraw and avoid the test altogether. Pressure is not just what you say. Pressure is what your energy communicates. Pressure is your urgency. Pressure is your tone when you're trying not to sound desperate. Pressure is the way you ask a simple question, but the answer decides your whole mood. Pressure is the feeling that if they don't reply, you will spiral. Pressure is the emotional weight behind, "Can we talk?" Pressure is the unspoken expectation that they must respond in a certain way to calm you. Avoidants are incredibly sensitive to that emotional weight because they're always scanning for the moment a relationship becomes an emotional job. And here's why this matters. The more you need them to soothe you, the more they feel unsafe around you. Not because you're wrong for wanting comfort, but because their wiring interprets, "I need you," as, "I will lose myself." So the avoidant starts to resist, not necessarily you, but the role they fear being forced into. They may start giving less. They may start delaying replies. They may become vague. They may create distance just to restore the sensation of being in control of themselves again. And when you sense that distance, you naturally reach harder, which increases pressure, which makes them pull away more. That cycle is how love turns into a push-pull war between nervous systems. This is the truth that makes them crumble. When you stop needing them, the pressure collapses. When you stop emotionally leaning on them, you stop feeling like a demand. When your life is full, and your worth is not tied to their replies, your presence becomes lighter. And suddenly, the avoidant can feel something they couldn't feel before, because their defenses aren't constantly activated. They can feel curiosity. They can feel longing. They can feel the absence. They can even feel regret. Because now contact doesn't feel like a trap door opening beneath them. At the same time, your independence introduces consequence. If you don't need them, you're not guaranteed. If you don't chase, you can leave. If you are okay without them, they can actually lose you. And that's when their nervous system wakes up. Not because you begged harder, but because you stopped begging. Not because you proved your love, but because you proved your self-respect. The avoidant doesn't crumble from your intensity. They crumble from your calm shift into emotional self-sufficiency because it removes the two things they relied on: your pressure and your predictability. Once you understand this, you stop trying to reconnect by pouring more emotion into the space between you. You stop trying to win them with explanations. You stop handing them your nervous system to manage. And that's when the dynamic flips. Instead of them running from your need, they start approaching your peace, because peace feels like freedom. And freedom is the only doorway an avoidant can walk through without panic. They crumble when you stop trying to reconnect through emotion, because emotion has never been the bridge for an avoidant. It's been the alarm. You might believe that heartfelt conversations create intimacy, that vulnerability creates closeness, that explaining your feelings will help them finally understand. In a secure relationship, that's true. But with an avoidant, especially one who is not actively doing the work to heal, emotional intensity often registers as pressure. And pressure activates their shutdown. So when you keep trying to reconnect by being more emotional, you're unknowingly pushing the exact button that makes them disappear. This is why so many people get stuck. They think the problem is not enough communication. So they communicate harder. They write longer messages. They clarify more. They try to be mature, honest, and open. They do emotional labor on behalf of both people. They share pain, needs, boundaries, hopes. And the avoidant hears all of that as one thing. I am about to be responsible for a lot. The avoidant might care, but care is not the same as capacity. If their capacity is low, they will protect themselves by distancing. And your emotional reach will feel like being pulled into something they cannot hold, without feeling trapped or ashamed. Trying to reconnect through emotion also creates an invisible bargaining table. Even if you don't mean it, many emotional messages carry a hidden request. Please reassure me. Please pick me. Please explain why. Please promise you won't leave again. That hidden request is what makes avoidants feel cornered. They don't want to be the reason you're okay or not okay. They don't want the job of regulating your nervous system. So they delay, minimize, or withdraw, which makes you feel worse, which makes you reach again. And now the avoidant has confirmation. This is why closeness is dangerous. The moment I engage, emotions explode and I'm responsible. When you stop trying to reconnect through emotion, you remove the bargaining table. You stop asking for reassurance. You stop requesting emotional explanations. You stop trying to make them process feelings on your timeline. You stop turning every interaction into a moment. Instead, you begin interacting from regulation. Calm, brief, clear, respectful. No hooks. No tests. No emotional traps. This doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become contained. And containment is what their nervous system trusts. An avoidant is more likely to approach a person who feels emotionally self-contained because self-contained people don't feel like a risk. They don't demand immediate closeness. They don't spiral if replies are slow. They don't punish silence with drama. They don't flood the avoidant with intensity the second they open the door. So the avoidant's brain can finally consider contact without immediately anticipating overwhelm. That is why detachment is so magnetic. It removes the fear that connection will cost them freedom. But the crumble happens for another reason too. When you stop reconnecting through emotion, you stop giving them the one lever that controlled you, your reaction. Avoidants often regulate the relationship by regulating your emotional state. If you're anxious, you chase. If you chase, they pull away. If they pull away, you chase harder. That loop makes them feel in control of distance. Your reaction becomes predictable, and predictability is a form of control. When you stop reacting, the loop breaks. They can't pull away and expect you to move closer. They can't send a breadcrumb and expect a full emotional meal. Their usual strategies stop producing the same results. That's when they feel something uncomfortable: uncertainty. Uncertainty about whether you're still emotionally attached. Uncertainty about whether they can still return whenever they want. Uncertainty about whether they still have access to your attention. That uncertainty is what creates their emotional activation. Because now they can't regulate intimacy by simply creating distance. Distance might actually lead to loss. And that's the truth. The avoidant doesn't crumble because you become louder. They crumble because you become quieter in a new way, quiet without longing, quiet without chasing, quiet without needing. They feel the absence of your emotional pursuit like a missing safety net. They feel the loss of control. They feel the consequence of their distance. And suddenly, the thing they relied on, your emotional effort, no longer exists. When you stop reconnecting through emotion, you make two things happen at once. You remove pressure, and you introduce consequence. Pressure is gone, because you're no longer emotionally demanding. Consequence is present, because your attention is no longer guaranteed. That combination forces them to face a question avoidance tries to avoid. If I keep staying distant, do I lose this for real? They crumble when you stop reacting, because your reaction was the hidden engine of the whole dynamic. For a long time, the avoidant didn't have to fully invest to keep the connection alive, because your nervous system did the investing for both of you. When they went quiet, you filled the silence. When they pulled back, you reached forward. When they gave mixed signals, you tried to interpret them and repair the gap. Your reaction wasn't just an emotional response, it was the glue holding the bond in place. And as long as you kept reacting, the avoidant could keep doing what avoidants do, regulate closeness by controlling distance. Reaction doesn't only mean texting. Reaction is the internal panic that leaks into your tone. It's the urge to explain yourself. It's asking for reassurance. It's the "Are we okay?" message. It's the long paragraph after a cold reply. It's the apology you didn't owe, just to restore connection. It's the way your mood depends on their presence. It's the way you keep the door open emotionally even after they've treated you like an option. Avoidants may not admit it, but they can feel when someone is reactive to them, because reactivity carries a kind of emotional pressure. Your behavior is controlling my emotional state. That pressure makes them want distance, because distance is how they stop feeling responsible. So when you stop reacting, you remove the avoidant's ability to regulate you. That sounds harsh, but it's simply how the nervous system dynamic works. If every time they withdraw, you chase, then withdrawal becomes a tool. It becomes the lever that pulls you closer. If every time they give a breadcrumb, you respond with warmth and intensity, the breadcrumb becomes enough to keep you attached. They don't have to show up consistently, because your reaction bridges the gap. Your reaction teaches them. Minimal effort still gets maximum access. And minimal effort plus maximum access is extremely comfortable for someone afraid of intimacy. The crumble begins the first time they pull away and you don't follow. Not dramatically. Not with a speech. Just with calm. You don't double text. You don't demand an answer. You don't post indirectly. You don't send a final emotional essay. You simply return to your life. That moment is disorienting because it breaks their prediction. Avoidants rely on prediction to feel safe. They may not be consciously calculating, but their nervous system has learned your pattern. If they create distance, you will compensate. When you don't compensate, their strategy stops working the way it used to. At first, they often interpret your non-reaction as anger or a game, because they're used to emotional movement. They expect something: a plea, a fight, a check-in, a closure message. When none of that arrives, the mind starts searching. What does this mean? Are they done? Did I lose them? And that question is what an avoidant tries to avoid feeling. Uncertainty about access. Because uncertainty forces vulnerability. It forces them to confront that they cannot control the connection through distance anymore. Then comes the deeper layer: consequence. Consequence is not punishment. Consequence is the natural result of behavior. If they withdraw, they may actually lose closeness. If they stay inconsistent, they may actually lose you. Your non-reaction introduces consequence because it stops the cycle of free repair. Free repair is when you keep fixing the relationship while they keep avoiding. When you stop reacting, you stop repairing for free. You stop soothing their guilt with your availability. You stop smoothing over the gaps with your emotional labor. And now the avoidant has to face the gap itself. This is where they crumble internally. Not always in tears, not always dramatically. Often it looks like confusion, then checking in, then testing. They may send a casual message to see if the old reaction is still there. They may like a post, reply to a story, ask a simple question. They're testing whether the lever still works. If you respond with calm warmth, but not hunger kind, brief, not chasing, you confirm the shift. You are no longer reactive, which means you are no longer controllable in the old way. And this is the uncomfortable truth. The avoidant didn't lose control because you became cruel. They lost control because you became regulated. You stopped making your peace dependent on them. You stopped handing them the power to change your emotional state with one message or one silence. And once your reaction is gone, the avoidant has to choose show up differently or risk losing access. That choice is what exposes their avoidance, because avoidance only works when someone else keeps chasing. They crumble when your calm boundary and emotional independence become so consistent that they can't use the old cycle to regulate anymore. Because the final truth is this: an avoidant can tolerate almost anything except losing control of distance. Distance is how they manage feelings. Distance is how they manage shame. Distance is how they avoid responsibility without having to say, "I can't." And for a long time, they could use distance without paying a real price because your emotional availability absorbed the impact. You were the safety net. You were the cushion. You were the person who kept the bond alive even when they were absent. But emotional independence changes the math. It takes away the cushion, not with anger, but with dignity. A calm boundary is not a threat. It's not a lecture. It's not, "You better change or else." It's something quieter and stronger. Access is not automatic anymore. Consistency is required. Respect is required. Presence is required. And the reason this makes avoidance crumble is because it confronts them with the one thing avoidance tries to escape: consequence paired with choice. Not consequence as punishment, but consequence as reality. If you withdraw, you lose closeness. If you stay inconsistent, you lose access. If you want connection, you have to participate. Avoidants often live in a space where they want the benefits of intimacy without the weight of intimacy. They want comfort, attention, loyalty, and emotional warmth, but they want it on terms that never make them feel trapped. So they reach out when they miss you, then pull back when it gets real. They show up when it's easy, then vanish when it's emotionally demanding. And the reason this pattern persists is because it's rewarded. They disappear, and you stay attached. They reappear, and you welcome them fully. They give a small amount, and you give a lot. Your love fills their gaps. Your patience extends their avoidance. That doesn't mean you were wrong for loving. It means the structure of the dynamic was training them to stay the same. Emotional independence breaks that training. Emotional independence is when your life is no longer organized around their moods. It's when silence doesn't collapse you. It's when you don't chase clarity to calm anxiety. It's when you don't need their response to feel okay. It's when you can be warm without being desperate, and you can be unavailable without being bitter. Avoidants can feel this because the emotional pull they used to sense is gone. You're not leaning toward them anymore. You're not waiting. You're not hovering. You're not keeping the door open with your heart. And that absence of pull is both relieving and terrifying for them. Relieving because there's less pressure. Terrifying because access is no longer guaranteed. The crumble often starts when they return with a small test, and it doesn't work. They send a "Hey, expecting the old version of you: instant warmth, instant availability, instant emotional reconnection. But you respond differently. You're kind, but you're not wide open. You're friendly, but you don't over-give. You don't punish them, but you also don't ignore what patterns cost you. You might reply, but you don't abandon your boundaries. You don't hand back full intimacy just because they made contact. That is the moment they feel the shift. The old cycle is not available. And once the old cycle is unavailable, they have to face themselves. They have to face the fact that they can't keep someone close while staying emotionally distant. They have to face the fact that love is no longer enough to buy tolerance. They have to face that if they want you, they must show up in a way that is consistent, not occasional. That confrontation triggers what looks like crumbling, increased contact, checking in more, sudden jealousy, unexpected vulnerability, or even frustration. Sometimes they try to regain control by pulling away again, hoping you'll chase. But you don't. Your calm boundary stays. And that's what forces the reality to land. This is why calm is more powerful than emotion. Emotion gives them a reason to retreat. Calm gives them nowhere to hide. When you are emotional, they can label you as too much. When you are calm and boundaried, they can't blame your intensity. They can only face their own inconsistency. And that is deeply uncomfortable, because it removes their favorite escape hatch. This is overwhelming. If you are not overwhelming, then their avoidance becomes visible, even to themselves. So they crumble because your independence does not attack them. It simply stops rescuing them from the consequences of their own behavior. You no longer chase them back into connection. You no longer reward distance with access. You no longer confuse love with tolerance. And once they realize they can't control closeness through distance anymore, they are forced into a decision: evolve and show up, or lose access permanently.